Hello and welcome to the Society of Fantasy Fanatics podcast, where two BFFs, KJILO,
Me.
that's her, and El Spristo, that's me, deep dive into the lore, romance, theories, and much more from your favorite fantasy reads. Feel free to do all of the good things. Hit that like button, subscribe for more of our content, and come join us over on Instagram where we are SFF underscore podcast.
We're new. We'll get there. Details
And we will
below.
share how to reach us on down in the description below as well. So, but here we are again for another episode, and this time we are talking book 2 of the Letters of Enchantment series. So, KJ, what are we talking about today?
So we're diving into book 2, which is Ruthless Vows of Rebecca Ross's Letters of Enchantment duology. Yes, hold it up. Yay! So book 2, Ruthless Vows, follows Iris E. Winnow and Roman C. Kate as they dive deeper into the war between the two divines, Dacra and Enva. We ended off book 1, Divine Rivals, with Iris and Roman caught in the middle of a gas bomb raid on a village near the battlefront, which has been instigated by Dacra, one of the five divines. During the attack, Roman and Iris, who are now married, so sweet, are thrust apart in the mayhem and chaos. Forrest, yes, Iris's brother is alive. Who would have thought that one? Drags an unwilling Iris to safety while leaving Roman, who is stuck in the gas attack, behind. So the last we see of Roman is him being consumed by the gas as he's crawling his way towards Iris. Dacra finds him just moments from death and brings him back to life. Start at book 2. So, a rule to note that Dacra has extraordinary healing powers, with a caveat though. And I'm pretty sure we're going to unpack this a little bit, but I still don't quite understand it, but I'm just going to go with it. If someone is dying, Dacra's healing power will strip them of their memories. Sort of. Mileage may vary. Now we have Roman, who has been stolen to become an unwilling war correspondent for Dacra, and Iris, who has been brought back to Oath by her brother Forrest, and she continues to be a war correspondent for the Inkridden Tribune. So basically, they're working for the enemies. But despite being separated by hundreds of kilometers, both Roman and Iris each have one of the 3 Alouette magical typewriters. Aha! There's our story right there. So now we have a reversal of roles. Iris is writing to Roman, but unlike in Divine Rivals, where Roman knew Iris's identity, it's Iris who knows of Roman. And to add on top of that, Roman doesn't even know his own identity, basically. There are multiple conflicts that happen in Ruthless Vows, which in our opinion is like both a good thing and something that causes some confusion. Iris needs to help Roman get his memories back because, hey, like she wants the love of her life and her husband back, safe and sound, which is reasonable. I mean, and Roman, who is now deep in enemy territory, knows something is terribly wrong and needs to figure out Dacra's motivations while trying to get his own memories back. Plus, he keeps having these little memories of Iris, and it's so sweet.
And these dreams as well, which might be important.
Yeah, we're like all of it. Most of it we're gonna talk about. I mean, we could talk about it for a week, which we already have been. The thing is that Ruthless Vows is a lot more complex than Divine Rivals, and because of this, we also have a lot more world building, plot lines, characters, and stakes. This includes an entire history between the 2 divines, Dacra and Enva, as well as the other 3 divines who we still have not met and don't really know much about. There's also a much larger issue of, I don't know, like there's just a war going on and how to end it. And there's also a human resistance group, the Graveyard, who kind of seem a little shady. All of that, no big deal, right? Just 2 kids, they can handle this. We have some thought. Yeah.
For sure. Remember, 18 and 19 years old. How hard can it be?
I was already doing that at 16. Whatever. So we have some thoughts, obviously. Let's dig in.
I feel like almost I don't know where to start when you say let's dig in. I'm like, there's so, as you kind of mentioned in the summary, there's so much going on in this book. absolutely still love Roman and Iris. Still love the dynamic between them. Still just think they're the cutest
Mm.
cutie pies who ever did cute. Um, yeah.
Fantastic.
I don't think we talked about this in our previous episode, but like one of the things that is true about this book is it's like spice level 0.
Hmm.
Like you're not even like getting a very like mild jalapeno here.
Yeah.
Like this is just, you know,
It's very sweet. Like
a
you
mashed
know what's going
potato.
on, but it's so like, and your heart is like a little racing a little bit, and it's just so sweet. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and like as people will come to know, we can smut along with the best of them, but like there is something very sweet about this like low
Mhm.
spice level of romance. Like I think it adds to the sweetness and like the tenderness and the dreaminess and all of that. So like I think that was like really beautifully done, and like especially their
Mm.
reunion and some of like the moments around their reunion, like there's a moment where Roman finally realizes who Iris is again. There's a moment where he has to pretend to be on a mission, or he's not pretending, he
Mhm.
is on a mission for Dacre, but then also is like secretly slipping Iris a note.
Mm.
Like there's some very sweet moments.
Writing magical love letters to each other. I mean, this just like she's already got the romance nailed.
I guess this should go without saying spoilers, but like the ending where we have
Mm.
Roman and Iris living together, and Roman's working on his novel and Iris is proofing the pages, like
Oh, so sweet.
relationship
And he's so
goals.
shy about sharing them with her and very tender. And like as writers, we understand that, but there's
We get
so much trust
it.
that, he puts in her. But we have that ending versus like the very beginning of the duology. There's such a stark difference, but there's still like they become more of who they actually have always been, right? They just sort of all the armor
Mm,
is off. Please edit my manuscript for me. Give me feedback. It's just,
yeah.
oh, I know.
At the end of book one, did actually want to kill Forrest
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah, that was shady.
Quite a
Yeah.
lot. It was such a kind of shocking ending. And I think intentionally at the end of book one, we're kind of questioning, like, wait, is he now working for Daka? Like,
Mhm.
he's stolen something from their house. He's the only one who has a gas mask in this gas attack. We're very deliberately set up to think, oh no, he's turned, he's a villain. Pretty quickly, we understand that's not what's happened. But I did just, and throughout this book, as we kind of realize, no, he's not the bad guy. And actually, he is carrying a lot of guilt for for the role that he did play in Daka's
Mhm.
army. So I did really appreciate and value having his storyline in the
Yeah.
book. And I think there's a really lovely element to his story about, so we might get into this a bit more later, but one of the impacts of Daka's healing is that once this is where we're going to
I
get
know it's like
confused,
it's very
or where
complicated.
I'm going to get confused anyway. So once somebody who's been healed by Daka starts to regain their memories, the healing that he's done starts to
Mhm.
disappear. So it's not like you're permanently healed, and in some way, the healing is linked to your loss of memory. Like you can only stay in that healed state if you don't remember your previous
Mhm.
life. And so we get this idea of as the memories return, so do the
Mhm.
wounds, which is just like a really lovely metaphor, or not lovely, but really
Poignant.
well
Mhm.
done metaphor for the idea of
Yeah.
trauma and wounds and remembering trauma. And yeah, I think that was a really interesting thread. I just wish we'd seen a bit more of it, which I think might be a recurring refrain that you and I mention
Yeah.
throughout.
Yeah. I think like all of the things that we love about Ruthless Vows, there's also, a caveat with it where we didn't get enough, it wasn't fully fleshed out. So it's hard to talk about what we love because I feel like I needed more. Like either strip it down, keep it narrow focus like she had with Divine Rivals, or just make it a trilogy. like
Mm-hmm.
something more like that. But I wanted to get back to Forrest here. Is that so Forrest, who again is Iris's older brother, 5 years older, he went off to war on Enva's side originally, and then he went missing for 5 months. And we see him again at the end of Divine Rivals, he's alive. What is going on? Oh my God. But there's something very off about him. And then we learn in Ruthless Vows that he was mortally wounded. And then the same thing that happened to Roman happened to Forrest, where Dacra found him, healed him, and then made him fight for his side. But Forrest is like, wait a second, his memory started coming back to him. He defected, went to find his sister, save his sister, and then get the hell out of Dodge. We need to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like Forrest's story. And I feel like there could have been a lot more with Forrest. And as you get your memories back, you start to feel the wounds again. The wounds become more apparent again. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
perfect analogy for, how the body remembers trauma. It's not even an analogy, really. It's like, this is
Yeah.
basically how we remember trauma, how we process trauma, and how the body remembers trauma. And I feel like there was not enough unpacked there with Forrest. Now that I really consider it, I would have loved to see a lot
Mm.
more Forrest. Because, like you said, we didn't like him at the end of Divine Rivals, like at all.
No.
Like, he was
Yeah.
evil. Like, what are you doing, tearing these two kids apart? But then we start to
Mm-hmm.
see a little bit more of him and how deeply traumatized he is. And I feel like there was something missing there.
Yeah, and like even, we get little
Mm,
glimpses of how he's doing post coming back to
mm,
Oath and trying to restep into his life. So he has a lot of fear about people finding out what happened to him. He's kind of isolating himself. And then when Iris gets back on the reporting trail, which again, I was a bit like, wait, why did that happen? But anyway, that might just be me misremembering. He starts up a relationship with Prindle,
mm-hmm.
Sarah Prindle, who is a former colleague from
Of
the
Gazette?
Tribune.
Gazette.
Gazette?
The Gazette.
Gazette. The Oath
We'll
Gazette.
get
Yeah,
there.
not the Tribune. Yeah. um and so, we see like he's starting to like come back into life. He goes to a doctor. Like we start to see some of
Mhm.
these things, but it's all very kind of removed because there's so much happening in this book. So we get like little glimpses of it, and we see towards the end of the book Roman, who also obviously healed by
Mhm.
Daka, having the same issues of re-arising wounds. We see that there are wards full of these soldiers who have these returning wounds. So like we get a glimpse of that bigger story, but not as much as I might have hoped
Mhm.
for if we had another book,
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. Which would you have preferred, for it to be a little bit simpler, more like Divine Rivals, or perhaps an additional book to sort of like stretch out the story and really dig into some of this juiciness?
I think I would have liked another book. I think Divine Rivals was really beautifully done and felt like it stood very
Mhm.
well in that way that it was done. But once we get into that bigger world, which I don't know what else we could have done after the story of Divine Rivals, like where do we go next from
Mhm.
here? We have to start looking out at the world. And there was so much promised in Divine Rivals that we were curious about, like just hinted at. So I feel like expanding it out would have been more satisfying to me, but I'm not sure for sure.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you
So I
reckon?
think it could have been expanded, to be honest. I think because there were all of these like little details and like these Easter eggs. She left so many Easter eggs for us in Divine Rivals that I was really curious. And to be honest, I'm not sure how she would have been able to extend the feel of Divine Rivals throughout two novels. Because that romance in
Mm-hmm.
itself, like it kind of like, other than the fact that they were ripped apart at the end, erase that, make it one novel. They was fully formed, right? They, got
Mm-hmm.
married and it was so sweet and they're doing the right thing. And so I'm not sure how you would be able to continue with that kind of, um, I guess, like pathos, that kind of, storytelling, keep it simple, keep it sweet, that sort of thing throughout both books. But meanwhile, she has all of these other details, right? All of this, the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that she could have slowed down in some of the writing.
Mm.
Like, when I think of like specifically when Roman, was it, what's the underworld? I think like the underworld where Dakra lives.
Is it just called the
I
Underworld?
think
I
it is
actually
just
don't
like
know.
the underworld or the underneath, or
Yeah,
yeah.
something like that.
Basically, it's like
It does
living in
not.
these magical tunnel systems underneath the earth, basically.
Hmm.
And we got such a quick glimpse of that, and it seemed so cool, but we were taken out of it right away. I would have loved to have lingered there a little longer, to be honest. And these magical creatures as well that, we see in Daka's army.
I think what both of us probably
Mhm,
felt is that the world, and like you can tell me if I'm wrong if this isn't how you were feeling, but the world
mhm,
building and the world that Ross had created is super interesting. There's so many different elements here that we were just really drawn to. And it felt so rich, it felt so exciting, but it didn't necessarily feel like all of those elements got the
mhm,
airtime that maybe we wanted
yeah,
for them. So, for example, like we talked about the gods who I was thinking about this earlier, like Divine Rivals, Ruthless Vows. These titles feel like they're about the gods to some extent more than
mhm,
Roman and Iris, and yet they're so removed from the story. We really only get glimpses, and we certainly don't get anything of the other three gods who have been, we find out, killed by Enver, and we don't get anything about the Skywards or the underlings, like more broadly about what's the difference between them. So it's kind of there but not there in a way. I'm just so curious
yeah.
about it, want so much more of it, and I think there's a few things where we both felt
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Like there, I was noticing too throughout both Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows, there was a lot of imagery, and I was really hoping that it would be more meaningful. So I noticed that Marisol, we didn't talk about Marisol last time, but Marisol ends up becoming quite a prominent secondary character. And she owns a bed and breakfast that's close to the front. That's the place that Iris and then I was gonna call him Rowan or Roman. See, I'm reading One Dark Window right now as well, and there's a whole family of Rowans there, so I'm going to be saying Rowan instead of Roman. Whatever, let's just go with it. Sorry, universe crossover. Um, so this is the bed and breakfast that Iris and Roman.
Do you need to go to calling him
Okay, let's just
Carver
call him
just to like
C.
clarify?
Let's call him Carver. Yeah. So Roman. So let's call him Kit. So where Kit and
There we
Iris
go.
go, Marisol owns this. So basically, she's hosting them for the entirety of like almost two books, right? So Marisol ends up becoming a really important character, and I noticed that she's often wearing red. Right. That's one of the things that like is how Iris ends up finding her in crowds and, among bombings and stuff because she's wearing red. And I'm like, there's something here. And then there was nothing there. It's just she was wearing red.
Hmm.
There's also imagery about a nightingale bird and as well as a passage in there. And I was kind of hoping like we would dig more into this imagery.
Yeah, and as if you've seen our previous episode, you know that I was super hung up on all of the animal names and what's the meaning of all of the animal names. And again, in this book, the
Yeah.
nightingale, the bird book, the fact that the bird book gets transferred between Iris to Roman, and like, it felt like there was some deeper meaning there. And then.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe there was, but it's not necessarily in the
Yeah.
book if there
If there
was.
was. Yeah. We need
Um,
another book. Okay, Ross, get on it.
yeah. It's interesting. I wonder, I don't know if you noticed this, KJ, but Ross seems to be a duology writer. So her other series tend to be duologies. And it's interesting to me, and I feel like you know a bit more about publishing trends than I do. Is that like a trend or a thing? Is that a YA thing? Or is this just a Rebecca Ross special? I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if you
don't
know,
like
but
know. I can't put my like say concretely with empirical evidence, but I have seen more duologies lately. I'm just thinking of the Legendborn and Bloodmarked, Tracy Dion. So, and I also don't know if it's just in. Oh, and there's another one too, Holly Black, The Stolen Heir and The Prisoner's Throne. I just finished reading those two. It might just be a YA thing, but I do know the duologies are starting to become a little bit more popular. Maybe it's like reader fatigue, to be honest. We have these
mm.
massive series. You think of like a Sarah J. Maas. She does not know how to write small. Like, right? And even her trilogies, like the latest trilogy that she had, yeah, just came out, is like I don't know, like six of these, you know? It's
Yeah, yeah.
massive. Even a trilogy is massive. So there might be a little bit of reader fatigue happening right now. I do know that agents and acquisitions editors are starting to think a little bit of like shorter books, keep it fast paced. So
Mm,
maybe that's part of the duology thing, or maybe it is because like that's a YA thing. I don't know specifically, but I am
mhm.
seeing more duologies lately. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. If anyone knows the answer to this, rather than us
Yeah.
speculating, tell us down below, leave us a
Let us
comment.
know.
Super
Yeah.
interesting. And of course, maybe it's just the story that Rebecca Ross had in her
Yeah.
head, or how she tends to write tends to be in these paired books, which gotta trust your process if that's true.
Yeah.
But we were hungry for
Yeah.
more, and we were trained on the
Yeah.
big
Go big or go home.
the big expanded series, so we expect more.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's also the thing too, is that, I've seen people say they don't want to pick up Throne of Glass. I'm looking at my bookshelves over here. They don't want to pick up Throne of Glass because it is like a 14 billion book series with, prologue, novellas all in four, there's four of them all in one book. It's a lot, so people don't actually want to make that commitment. And it's not just like spending the money commitment, it's also the time commitment, like you become
Mhm.
invested in these characters and it takes a long time to get through it all. I respect the duology, I really really do. You can sink your teeth into a
Yeah.
world, get to know the characters, really start to feel the writing, like become immersed in that kind of prose and imagery and that sort of thing, and then but still not feel exhausted.
I was thinking about this in terms of there's there's a question
Hmm.
here for me. It's like, and so often as writers we talk about like what are the promises you're making at the start of a book, right? And how are you going to fulfill them to a reader? So what are the expectations that Rebecca Ross set up both in Divine Rivals and
Yeah.
Ruthless Vows? And then my question is it that she doesn't meet those promises that she's given to us, the reader? Does she fail to meet the promises she's set? Or are our
Mm.
expectations based on the million book like
Hmm. Oh,
series,
that's
the
interesting.
thousands and thousands and thousands of pages that other books have trained us to, kind of
Hmm.
expect? And I don't know where I fall on that, because I do think there were certain promises made in these books. And, especially when we come to this question of the
Hmm.
gods, this book starts and ends, is bookended with
Hmm.
Enver. She is the character in the prologue and the character in the epilogue. So it feels as though, okay, we're going to be really into the god's
Yeah.
story in this book. And we're just not
Yeah.
really. There's still, I mean, we see a lot more of Daka because Roman's
Hmm.
with him. We see a little bit of Enver, but
Yeah.
not so much. She plays a very kind of removed role. So I think there's maybe some combination between our expectations maybe not matching the vision of Rebecca Ross, but also I think there is some element of the book doesn't quite deliver what I was getting
Yeah.
promised, or at least what I thought the promise of the book
I
was.
agree with you actually. And I mean, like, I still think she did a phenomenal job. I think she's an amazing writer. Her prose, like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, please show me the way. But I do feel like even what was it? And you texted me this. Where is it on here? Will their love end the war or break the world? At the back. That's a
Mm-hmm.
that's a big statement. That's a huge question. I didn't really like feel that the energy from that throughout the book. I just
Yeah. And like in fairness to Rebecca Ross, that like this pull
yeah.
quote on the back is, is
Mhm.
marketing. She's not necessarily
Yeah,
responsible
we
for
get you,
that. But
girl.
yeah, that but it goes to the promise made to the reader
Yeah.
includes the marketing, the placement, the kind of comps that it's given, right? So yeah, definitely. And just to pull up Divine Rivals as well, which says no god, no creature, no war can come between them. Again, super
It does sound
epic.
epic,
Like,
but it's not epic. I mean, the love is
yeah,
like epic.
the
So
love is epic.
epic.
It's epic in a small way, but
Yeah. I feel like that's what her power is keeping it really tightly focused on these human stories, and how it developed between Roman and Iris was just so I don't think like she could not have done it better the way it unfolded in Divine Rivals between Roman and Iris. I was also left wondering a lot in Ruthless Vows, why did Roman keep going back to Dakar? Like I feel like that wasn't the smart, like there was really not a lot of reason. I know that he was going undercover, that he was going to learn stuff, or, I guess like Enva's side, but it still did not feel as necessary to me as it probably
Mm.
should have. So I was like, why does he
Hmm.
keep leaving? Because there's no way in hell. Why does he keep going back there? There's no way in hell I would go. I would not go.
It's like, oh, I remembered my lost
Yeah.
love, and she's telling me that she has a getaway
Yeah.
car, and we can just hike
Yeah.
out of
And he says,
there.
I'm going to stay here. And she's like, okay, no,
Yeah,
drag him out. Be selfish. I kind of
yeah.
wanted, I was feeling there wasn't as much urgency in the emotions. I don't know if that makes sense between
Hmm.
them, I guess. And I mean, they're obviously in love, they're perfect for each other. But there were these moments where I'm like, I want to see a little bit more volatility.
Yeah, definitely this book. I mean, and it's partly the problem of, we already know that they're gonna be each other's
Hmm.
forever. So that tension is taken out. We replace that tension with, oh no, he's forgotten his memories, but it's only about, I mean, maybe a third of the way in that he gets
Hmm.
his memory of Iris
Hmm.
back. So then the tension is, well, that's why he has to stay
Hmm.
with Decker, right? Because the tension is, are they going to survive this
Hmm.
war or not? So yeah, but the emotional intensity of that isn't there because we know they're in love and they're going to do whatever they can to make their way back to each other and also save the world as
As
you
you
do.
do. I kind of wanted them to fight for each other instead of,
Mm,
I mean, yes, fight for the world, but what is more important? Like, you fight for each other because that is the purpose of peace and harmony, is to be able to be with your loved ones. I wanted them to fight for each other harder. And,
mm,
her not like pinning him down and saying, "You are not going back. I am not losing you again." I would have, that's what I wanted, you
yeah.
know?
Even if they'd ended up, or the story had ended up taking the same path, if we'd seen that
Yeah.
moment of her like refusing to listen
Yes.
to him, and
Yes.
yeah, that would have
I would have
been,
loved
yeah, I
it.
can see how that would have been really
Yeah.
powerful.
I mean, we still love them and we still believe that they love each other. Like, it's obvious. They're
Oh, for
so good. They're so
sure.
benevolent.
For
I've never
sure.
loved a
Yeah.
benevolent character more. I usually just loathe the benevolent ones. You're so boring, but no, I love these two. I also
Yeah.
noticed something too, and this, I really liked this. I don't know if it was like, if it was really that apparent, or maybe I'm just like the last horse to cross the finish line on this one. But there is so many mirrors in this book. There was a mirror
Mm,
throughout the entire duology, right? You have Roman writing Iris, then Iris writing to Roman, right? So the roles reverse.
yeah.
And then, but we also see a mirror between Roman and Iris's love and their selflessness and the beauty that can come out of their love versus the love, or sort of love, I don't know what it was,
Kinda.
between Dakra and Enva, because their spouses. Actually, this is where Ruthless Vows comes from. It's their vow to each other, but the amount of harm that their union has caused, and it's a war basically. And it has been, they've
Mhm.
killed their basically, Enva killed the siblings because of this. So you see this mirror between what love could do.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And it's like one of the like key core themes of and core
Hmm.
images of the book. I did really appreciate the kind of ambivalence in this book between the two
Hmm.
sides. So, yes, Dagger is clearly not a
Yeah.
good god, right? Like he's not winning any prizes for God of the Year. He started this war, he uses very vicious methods. He uses people as
Hmm.
props and toys and kind of moves them around his chessboard. Not saying he's not evil, but is
Good.
Enver good? Is this a battle of good versus evil? I don't know that it's that
Yeah.
clear. I don't think it's that straightforward because Enver, does she not do some of the same things? she uses people. She, in fact, enchants people using her music to get them to go off to war. We see her going into Iris's dreams, the dreams of other characters, in order to influence them to act in certain ways, including, and this is like so incredibly disturbing to me, using Iris's dead mother
Oh,
to get her message across. And I'm like, I don't know that Ember's the good guy
no, I
in
didn't
all
even
of
think
this,
about
you know?
that. Like, Empath, that's some shady work
Yeah.
there. Girl, we gotta talk.
Yeah. And so, like, I think, okay, yeah, I mean, she's good in the sense that she wants to stop
A war.
Daka. She's the side that we want to be on because she's the side that's, anti-destruction of humanity, which,
Fair.
you know,
Yeah.
gets your points for sure. But she's definitely morally
Yeah.
ambiguous. She is a gray character for sure for me. So I really actually appreciated that as well. That this isn't just kind of a cut and dry book. That and again, it's maybe that mirror
Mhm.
again between these like very idealistic and benevolent human characters, and then these divine characters that are just so like
Great.
morally
Yeah.
gray, yeah, or black,
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
somewhere from gray
Yeah.
to black on the scale of moral
Yeah. Yeah,
rectitude.
pretty I mean, that we don't know anything about the other 3, and I
Yeah.
I would have liked to have known. I think it would have made the stakes between Dakra and Enva a little bit higher for me if I had to know more about their family, because it's a family, apparently. And
Hmm.
we don't know anything about them.
Oh, I got it here in our notes.
Nice.
Mir, Luz, and
Those are good
Alba.
names, but we don't know
Yeah.
anything about them. I would have
Yeah.
loved to see more about the gods and actually just see them in action, see their character.
Hmm.
Because if our main sweethearts are fighting these wars that the gods start and they're fighting for the gods on one side or another, I want to know more about these gods.
And speaking of the gods and how they are, kind of shady on
Mhm.
both sides, we also in this book have a human resistance group that springs up in
Yes.
Oath called the
Yeah.
Graveyard. And they are like, do you know what? These gods,
Suck.
kind of over it.
Fair.
Let- Let's just kill both of them and be
I'm
done.
kind of with
let's,
them.
let's get these gods. Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, are we joining? Are we members
I
of the
don't know.
graveyard?
Like, I feel like their methods are sometimes a little bit like, you guys need to like tone it down a bit, but also fair enough, you know? They've been under the threat of war breaking out for how long? And then finally, war does break out because of these gods. I would be like, wash my hands of you gods. I am on my own. We're starting a team over here, and you guys are bye bye. Like, it makes sense. It really does make sense. And I love that in this vacuum, she then has put these characters, the graveyard, in there because it like that is what would happen, in the real world is what would
Mm-hmm.
happen. We just don't get enough of the graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so curious
Yeah.
about them. Fascinating that they basically overtake the political
Mhm.
system. So we see that they basically impose new laws on the city of Oath, where like they impose a
Mhm.
curfew, and like, so it's so interesting to see their rise and see that part of the human world, as you say, KJ, the way that it does really reflect what probably would
Mhm.
happen. But yeah, we don't really. I mean, Lieutenant Shane,
Mhm.
who is with Daka, he is an agent of the
Yeah.
graveyard. It's revealed at the end. So yes, we do have one character who we can put a name and a
Mhm.
face to, but we don't see a lot of them. We don't get, more about how they're
Yeah.
thinking and feeling, how they're planning, how they're imagining that they're going to kill the gods, because their one attempt in the book is
It's a disaster.
not so
It's a
successful.
disaster. Like,
So maybe we shouldn't just sign our membership cards for the
I don't know. I think it
graveyard
would be
just
fun.
yet.
I mean, maybe not. No, no, maybe not our membership cards. Maybe we should just move away. Let's just like,
Yeah, so maybe we should just like head off. Surely there are some other
yeah,
countries in this
let's
world
pack
we
up the
can go
U-Haul and
to.
get out of here.
Yeah.
But I loved the idea of the graveyard because again, this is exactly what would happen. If you have this kind of a regime, gods are not they don't run a democracy. Okay. Let's just like by nature, they are not democratic. Okay. So then we have this potential toppling, or, the humans want to topple this sort of totalitarian regime, I guess, that is happening here. But who's going to replace it? Well, more
Mm,
totalitarian regimes, because that is, if you take power by that much violence, how can you expect to build a democracy from that? It takes a long time, right? So it makes sense that
mhm.
this graveyard would crop up.
I think what we're getting at
Mhm.
here is, again, I think we've said this already. There is so much in here. It's such an interesting, rich world. We could dig into so many
Yeah.
different parts of it, and we're just
Oh
hungry
my
for
God.
more.
I think, like, I mean, I've said pretty much everything that I wanted more of, which is everything. It's like
Everything, all of
everything,
it.
like
Yeah.
starting hierarchy of needs here. I want more Forest, Enva. Like, I want more of her, and I want her to actually, like, don't show up in people's dreams. Get your ass here. I want to see you. I want to see you interact with people, because you have been so elusive for so long. No, you don't get a free pass. Get your butt over here. I wanted more of the graveyard. I think that it would have been
Hmm.
super cool if she kind of like turned her focus a little bit more to that, because then that would have given the human element of the story even more nuance. And I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted, like, Roman and Iris to fight for each other more. I wanted them to fight,
Mm,
claw, tooth and nail, scrappy to get to each other, because yeah, why wouldn't
yeah.
you?
I'm just remembering now one of the things that when we were texting after the end of Divine Rivals, I was like, I bet that Nana Kit has something to do with all of
Yeah,
this.
Nanakit.
And I, where's Nana Kit in this
What?
book? And again, like it's just some of those things that I really, really wanted. And we talked a little bit about Marisol earlier and how, the red dress, what does it mean? And the fact that Marisol's B&B is one of the only buildings that doesn't fall. And I think at the end of book one, certainly and I think maybe both of us thought it had something to do with
Yeah, that
Marisol, that
she
she
was
maybe had some
Enva
kind of
or
power.
something, like,
Yeah, exactly. But it didn't turn out to be that. And there was another explanation, which does make sense in the world of the story. But there were just so many things where, and we didn't see a whole bunch of Marisol in this book, which made me sad. I want to see
yeah.
Marisol and her wife and their
Yeah,
big
I really like
reunion. And,
Marisol.
just we want all of the things.
Yes.
So this one is from quite early on, page 48 in the
Mhm.
hardback edition. And this is Roman writing before he has his memories back. And as he's just trying to figure out what the hell has
Yeah.
happened to him. So he writes, by all rights, I should be dead. I shouldn't be sitting at my desk writing these words for you to read. I shouldn't be drawing air, inhale, inhale, and staring at the stars, feeling how crossed out immense, crossed out beautiful, cold the world is now that I've evaded death, like a house guest who has overstayed their welcome. I don't know what else fuels me to keep rising at dawn and continuing forward other than this. There is, crossed out, a song, a story hiding in my scars, one that whispers to me even though I have yet to fully capture the words. You should be buried in a grave, the world says, so loudly it drowns out all other sound. And yet I press my fingers to the scars in my skin, soft, tender, warm as the blood beneath, and I hear, there is a divine crossed out. There is someone who has kept you here, breathing, moving, living.
But maybe that someone is actually Iris. Am I right? Am I the, like, the
Yeah.
only person who didn't realize that?
No, that's
Okay.
exactly how I read that. That even when he doesn't know
Yeah.
who Iris even is, he doesn't even know his own name.
Right,
He's
right.
he's aware that it's not really Decker who's kept him there. It's Iris. I also just love all those the crossings out in this letter. I don't know. There's something about that, like to have Ross showing us him
Mm-hmm.
struggling to articulate this pretty, like, we haven't talked about this, but this is a pretty intense experience to like be at the brink of death and be brought
Mm-hmm.
back from that brink of death again. She grapples with like the
Yeah.
humanness of these fantastical situations so well, just
Oh
so
yeah,
good.
absolutely. And she nailed trauma. Like, she nailed trauma with that letter. They're writing letters back and forth to each other again. And Iris has gone, this is a mirror again. She's going by her middle initial, E. for Elizabeth. She doesn't want to reveal herself to him because first she doesn't want to spook him. They might freak him out, which fair enough. But also she doesn't want to reveal herself to Dakra just in case the letters are found. And the letters never get destroyed, which I think is very sweet. Roman is writing to E saying, "Dear E, the problem is I want to hear from you at all hours. I want to read your words. I am greedy for them. I am, underline, hungry for them. You say you're moving locations day by day. Don't answer if you don't feel like it's safe or right to do so. But I cannot help but ask, which direction are you heading? Yours, R." And then it's her response. "Dear R, let me be your secret then. Tuck my words into your pocket. Let them be your armor. I am heading westward. Love, E." I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
The armor.
and then just, "I am heading westward." Like, oh, I am coming to you. Ross knows how to write, and she knows how to write people
Mhm.
so freaking well.
Yeah.
Like, I will continue
So
to consume her work.
yeah, I have a feeling I'm gonna pick up A River
Yeah,
Enchanted not too long
yeah,
from now. I hear
yeah,
good things. I'm ready.
yeah.
I'm ready to jump in. So,
Same.
yeah, definitely not writing off Rebecca Ross
Yeah.
because beautiful writing, fantastic characters.
Yes.
Mwah. Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. So, what are we thinking like for comps? If you like this,
Ooh, yeah. Okay. So I have I'm going in the way back machine
nice.
here. Digging deep for an older series. So this is way back in time, Trudy Canavan's The Age of Five trilogy. This was published like back in 2005, which makes me feel old because I remember buying them as they came out, but here we are. Here we are. And it has been a while since I've read this, but the reason I'm comping
Mhm.
this is if you are interested in a book series where the idea of these morally ambiguous gods is explored in a lot more
Mhm.
depth, if that was a theme in this book that you were like, oh, I'd really love to see more of that done, The Age of Five is all about that. It is about gods behaving badly.
Nice.
So it's very much more epic high
Mhm.
fantasy. If that's like that little piece of it, that theme, if that's something you're into, maybe check out those books. It has been, fair warning, like 20
It's been a
years
minute.
since I read these. But they might have aged. I can't promise you that they have
Don't come
aged
at us.
well, but I remember them being really, really interesting on that front.
Nice.
What about you? What are you
Yeah,
thinking,
I've got
KJ?
two actually, and it's sort of like to pull apart each part of the duology that either like just the human element or the world building element. So, if you wanted something a little bit more on the world building spectrum, I really love the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Leigh Bardugo. She wrote them, right? Yes, she did.
Unless she's not telling us something.
Like, ah, it is too late in the day to do this. I love the Shadow and Bone trilogy because there is a sweet love that does happen in the trilogy, but I also feel like there's these sort of the epic stakes. There are no gods, but there are like godlike humans in the Shadow and Bone trilogy as
Mm.
well, and there are magical creatures that give godlike powers. Check that one out. There's also the TV show, the Netflix show, which was canceled, and my heart is still broken because it was so good.
I did not know they
Oh,
cancelled
we are
it.
witnessing Ailsa's heartbreak right here.
Rude. Okay, I have some angry letters I need to go write, so I'll be back.
No one consulted me. But I feel like more for the writing style, the prose, as well as the, really zeroing in on human characters and emotion, obviously human characters, but the emotions, the nuances, and Alex E. Harrow, anything she writes.
Mm.
She is a phenomenal writer.
All right. Okay, the only thing we have
It's
left to
so
do is
good.
our
Yeah.
ratings. Okay, KJ, where are you
All right, so
going?
we have our rating system from 1 to 5, like normal, 1 to 5 stars. One being like DNF, I think we probably will never give a 1 star. Right up to 5, which is everything. We are blown away. The storyline was fantastic. We are still talking about it weeks later. Speaks to deeper issues, changes the way we feel about everything, and we basically lose so much sleep. That's our rate.
So
That's our very
much.
empirical sound.
How many hours sleep did we lose to this book? How much melatonin are we having to
Oh,
take in the wake
I
of
am
this
still
book?
billing like an entire month of melatonin to Rebecca Ross. My rating, I gave it a 3 stars. It was still an entertaining read. I still will read Rebecca Ross's work. I love her writing. I was left feeling a bit unsatisfied at the end, and ultimately, for me, there were too many plot holes and pacing issues. So,
Yeah, I think I talked last time about how Divine Rivals might be my book of the year. So I desperately wanted to love this, and I desperately wanted it to be like that second 5 star of the
yeah.
year. Unfortunately, I also gave it a 3 star. I just didn't fall in love with this book in the same way as I did with Divine Rivals. It just lacked some of the spark for me, and I just had all of those questions left lingering, and things that I wanted a little bit more of. So a happy 3. Like, I still loved reading this book, and like you, I will still want to read more of Rebecca Ross's work. I'm in it for the
Mhm.
long haul. But yeah, not quite up to the
The
brilliance
first
of
one.
Divine Rivals for
Yeah.
me. Also, I do promise that in future we won't always give the same rating. Like, we're 2 for 2 on the same rating right now,
I
but
mean,
we definitely disagree
it doesn't
sometimes.
happen
So
often. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This, again, was so great. I love talking about nerding out, going into the weeds of all bookish, fantasy bookish things with my BFF, Ailsa. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, follow us on Instagram, handle SFF_podcast, and we'll see you next time.